Well, it's good to be with you this morning. It's a bit rainy outside, and so it's dark and impressive. And today we celebrate John the First, Pope and Martyr, and I may mention a little bit about him and his life. I will say that there are not too many examples of popes that have been martyred. And they're very few, and so this witness that's being shown by the Supreme Pontiff of the Church, it's an incredible thing to see, right? And really kind of conforming the person more to Christ, making them more Christ-like in a maximal way. And so he is an important saint. But I'm going to talk a bit about Acts of the Apostles. So we read from chapter 28, and Paul has been extradited to Rome. He is a Roman citizen, as you hopefully know, and so he's received better treatment than he would otherwise. They have this discussion about, in this testimony about what the actual charges are, and he ends up spending 2 years in a kind of a time of probation, essentially, and even in that time in Rome, Paul continues to evangelize and witness to Jesus. And what I kept going back to as I prayed with this scripture and I reflected was the overwhelming difficulty that followers of Christ experience when we witness the truth of Jesus to the world. Now think about this. This was actually almost the best possible outcome that this could have gone. Because Paul is a very educated man, and he's a Pharisee by culture, and he's a Jew, but he is a Roman citizen. If he had not been a Roman citizen, he would have basically been released to the Sanhedrin immediately. They would have said, "It's not my problem." They probably would have killed him immediately. So his being taken to Rome is like a good outcome. And consider this as well, that Paul doesn't just say, "Oh, I want to be a martyr because that's kind of what things are about. I'm just going to kill me anytime you want." Instead, he makes it as difficult as he can for them to impose this kind of punishment. Because Paul is not trying to be dramatic, or he's not trying to make a point. He really just wants to witness to Jesus. And so he uses all of his privileges. He invokes his status as a citizen of Rome. And all of this, he still ends up being martyred, tradition says, by beheading. But he makes it as difficult as he can for them. And so the overwhelming backlash that, you get. And I'm going to mention this in kind of making a point. Harrison Butker's speech, right? The NFL guy. And, whether or not you agree with everything he says, exactly the way he says it, notice the reaction. I was scrolling through social media, and all these people were like, he was way out of his lane, or, and he's a Catholic who practices his faith speaking at a Catholic college. So maybe it's okay for him to say what he believes. But, the reaction of so many people, including so many celebrities, that, "Oh, this is so out of line." And I thought to myself, they're just making his point. They're just making his point, which is that the world wants Christianity to be a completely private, exclusively private thing. They want us to kind of just stay in our room, stay in our lane, and not affect anything else, not witness to everything else. And and it's crazy, and it's so disordered on obviously many levels. People are perfectly happy to welcome innovations that historically are credited to Christian influence, such as public health care. Did you know that public health care was a Catholic ministry before it became an accepted aspect of Western life? You know, many other things as well. But when it comes to our belief in Jesus, our belief in the victory of the resurrection, there isn't that same welcoming. And ultimately, Paul, all he succeeds in doing for his cleverness is he just delays his execution. And so what I want to take from that again, and I don't want this to come across as really negative, but just to realize that we don't have a lasting home in this world. We do not. There is never going to be a time where in this life we are not engaged in the spiritual battle. The saints could have fallen from grace up until their death. The saints could have died outside of God's relationship until their death. And so this is a sobering and maybe unpleasant reality. But for me, it motivates me to be in the fight and to take it seriously. And this is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's also worth mentioning. I was reading something on, they call it Stacks or whatever. It's some kind of reading thing on the internet. And it's they have found that societies where the people believe in a God and in punishment after death for sin or reward, the people are very much better, morally so much better, and the societies function a lot better than in places where that's not the case. So apart from any other consideration, when we believe that there are consequences that ripple into eternity for my mistreatment of others, we see better outcomes for human behavior. Look at the world right now, 2024. Live the way you want. Do what you want. Doesn't matter. How are things going now? How are things going now, right? So we're seeing what it looks like to have completely abandoned faith in God and to just do what we want, live your best life, live your truth, right? That's what we're told. That's what we tell everyone. And so in conclusion, we look at our gospel today, and this is a fascinating excerpt at the very end. And Peter and Jesus and John, who, as he says, writes this gospel, are in dialogue. And there was a belief, especially in the early church, that the second coming of Christ was going to be imminent, that it would be within the lifetime of the apostles. And that obviously didn't happen. But a lot of pivotal events did happen, earth-shaking events like the final destruction of the Jerusalem temple by the Romans, and a great massacre that happened of the Jews. And so to realize, that as we continue to live our faith out, that only God knows when the second coming happens. It's our task while we are alive to proclaim Christ, not only in word but also in our choices, and to realize with sobriety, but also with the strength that comes from God, that we are going to have to fight the brokenness in our lives and the brokenness that has possessed the lives of other people in this, as long as we're in this on this side of eternity. And so we ask for the strength of Christ, and we ask our Blessed Lady and the saints to constantly intercede for us, to build us up, to build up, and to purify the church so that she may do her job in building up intentional disciples.